Well, today we are so blessed to have with us a special guest who is familiar to many of us. She was our former youth pastor. Her and her husband Dave and boys moved to Florida earlier this year, and because she just couldn't handle the snow. And thanks for bringing the warm weather with us. You're making it miserable for me. But put your hands together this morning for Rosemary Hook.
Thanks, friend. Good morning, Calvary. How are we today? All right. So to start this off, Ethan, are you up in the booth? Okay, Ethan, so as Pastor Nick mentioned, I was the youth pastor here. I was in charge of all the teenagers, and I had a catchphrase that I said all the time. I said it on my wedding day while I was saying my vows. It's just something I say when I get frustrated, sad, happy, mad. Ethan, what is that catchphrase? I don't really say it like that. That was weird. Thanks for making it weird. But I say cheese on bread all the time. So when Pastor Nick reached out and he was like, hey, I have this idea. The weekend after Christmas, he's like, do you want to preach? Number one, for those of you that don't know me, I'm not a fan of Christmas. I know. I quit my job here. I leave. I move 1,000 miles away. And yet somehow I get roped into preaching during the month of December. So this is the only time you're going to hear Christmas mentioned in my sermon. So Merry Christmas. But he was like, I want you to preach. He's like, and the sermon title is going to be Cheese on Bread. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. So then when he circled back and he's like, you still good? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, but what's the sermon title? What do you want me to preach on? And he's like, cheese on bread. And I was like, oh, you were serious? And he's like, yeah. So you're going to hear cheese on bread a lot. It's an exclamation. Like, geez, oh man, holy cow, holy cannoli, all those things. Flabbergasted, that was my grandma's favorite. Cheese on bread is mine. So we're talking today about when life catches you off guard and makes you say, cheese on bread, hey. There we go. I love a good audience participation. If you were here on the 23rd, I helped Pastor Nick sing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer the right way. I shouted out the word like a light bulb. I'm a very enthusiastic audience participation person. So good morning. You guys are smart and you catch on quick. I like it. My name is Pastor Rosemary. If I haven't met you yet, I worked here from December of 2020 to most recently, like June of 2025. My husband got promoted. He moved me to Florida. Everyone boo Dave. Boo. Just kidding. He is the love of my life and quite literally my best friend. Listen, if your spouse is not your best friend, and the Lord yeets you 1,000 miles away from all of your friends, you're in big trouble. He's literally my only friend. I make sourdough. I like to crochet things. I'll try to show him TikToks. He looks super uninterested. And our oldest son goes, Dad, cut her a break. You're literally the only adult she knows right now. So if your spouse isn't your best friend, you're in trouble if you move. So he is my best friend. Don't boo him. Treat him with kindness. It wasn't his fault. We blame Jesus because sometimes when you get yeeted left or right, it's just the Lord redirecting you and wonderful things come from it. And that's kind of what our sermon is about today. So I had the incredible honor of serving as the youth pastor here from December of 2020 until June of 2025. It was a quick, sudden, and honestly, completely unexpected move and change. But if I'm being quite honest, really, and for those of you that know me, transparency is my favorite thing. You need to be transparent in life. But that's kind of been the theme of my life. Ever since I invited Jesus into it, and truthfully, even before that, it's been like this series of unfortunate but fortunate events. It kind of, you get yeeted into the pit, and then you get scooped up out of it, and then when you look back, you're like, okay, I see what all that was about. So I say unfortunate, but also kind of fortunate events. Now, for those of you meeting me today for the first time, and for those of you who don't know my full story, ain't nobody got time for all of that today. So I'm gonna give you a super quick, super condensed version of my life in a nutshell from the time of early adulthood till now. And I even took notes because I tend to veer left and right and explain too much, and we don't have hours to be here. So it was quick and it was sudden. That's the story of my life. You're in a pit, you're on the mountain. You're in a pit, you're on a mountain. In 2012, I was living my life. I was a young adult. I was, as some people would call it, I don't think the kids say it anymore, slightly ratchet. Like, I was a hot mess express. I didn't know the Lord. I didn't live for the Lord. There was zero relationship with the Lord there. You think of it, I probably did it. It's not good. It was a hot mess. I was in the pit. But I was in a pretty serious car accident in 2012. Doctors were talking about possibly amputating my arm from the elbow down. It was terrifying. I was a hairdresser. You kind of need an arm to do that. It's sort of important to the career. But it was scary. In that moment, I made a deal with a Jamaican nurse that wandered into my room late one night. I was sitting there sobbing. He came in. He's like, "Can I do my paperwork here?" I'm like, "Sure." And he asked me if I knew God. I was like, "Not really." And he made me make him a promise that if God got me out of there with my arm, I would get a Bible. Just a Bible. Didn't have to go to church. Didn't have to commit my life to Christ. Just get a Bible. I was like, "Okay, you weird Jamaican man. Deal. If your God magically heals my arm, abracadabra, I'll get his book. I'll read it. It's a bestseller, I heard, you know?" So, as you can see, I have an arm. It is an internal prosthetic. I'm part bionic. I'm metal from the wrist to my elbow. My wrist is made of gears. It makes weird noises sometimes. Sometimes when it's really cold, which I don't have to worry about anymore. Thanks, Dave. Sometimes when it's really cold outside, it'll quite literally lock at the elbow and I can't really move it, and that really stinks. They would make fun of me in the office because I'd come in like an hour late. And I'm like, "Sorry guys, took me forever to get dressed today. What's up?" But I quite literally like the Tin Man. Sometimes it just does what it wants. But plot twist, I did not get a Bible. Forgot about that promise. I know. Oh, you're in trouble. Yes. A couple years passed, a couple of surgeries later, they got my arm figured out and working fairly well. And God had 3 different people at 3 different times give me 3 different Bibles while I was at work. It's a quite interesting story. There are probably about 20 people in here that know it. Grab somebody in the foyer or myself and we'll give you the whole rundown. 3 different people, 3 different Bibles, 3 different times. I was like, I'm gonna die. Something is coming for me. I need to find a church. So I found the church. It was this church in June of 2018. I walked into this building. I sat somewhere in that general area over there. A lovely lady named Miss Nancy was up here guest preaching. Nick had the audacity to take a vacation, so I didn't even meet him that day. But I gave my life to Christ that Sunday morning. Right over there, I raised my hand. I know. Won't he do it? I raised my hand. I committed my life to him. I cried a little bit, probably a lot of it. And I was like, well, now what? And a lovely gentleman named Mike Israel's like, now you open up one of those Bibles. Pick one. I'm like, all right. So I did. I joined life groups. I signed up for the worship team. I started actually reading the Bible, and I fully dove into Christianity, and my life turned upside down, as Will Prince would say. Early in 2020, I started volunteering with the youth group, and then COVID hit. And since I wasn't working, I literally volunteered for everything. At that point in time, Miss Amber Cole was in charge of our Calvary Cares, and I became her best friend. I'm like, who needs groceries? Well, I need out of my house. I will do literally anything for anybody. Sign me up. We did the big serve, volunteered. The youth pastor left. Nick was like, hey, you wanna step in? And I was like, let's do it. Had no idea what youth group looked like because I volunteered for youth group and then we stopped having normal youth group. It was on Zoom. It was in people's backyards. I took over and they were like, you're gonna start leading a youth service in church. And I'm like, hey, Google, what does youth group look like? Because I don't know. We winged it for a while and we did pretty good. Riley's in the house today. She was with me from beginning to end. She was up here running it. Woo! There she is. She was with me through thick and thin. We figured that out together, didn't we, Miss Riley? Yep. But it did great. We did great. I started taking ministry classes. I got hired full-time staff here. I quit my full-time career. And I met my wonderful husband. He was wrapped in a Hawaiian shirt in the front row. It was great. I was like, that's the one for me. The Hawaiian shirt should have been telling that God was going to yeet us someplace tropical eventually, but I became a stepmom, I became a wife, I became a pastor, all in the span of 13 years. And then April 2025, Dave gets offered a new position. June 2025, we sell our house. July 2025, we're Florida residents. In the span of 13 years, my life flipped so dramatically, I still sometimes have emotional whiplash. And I sit down and I look around and I'm like, what is happening? How did this happen? How am I here? But that's why I absolutely hate the question that Pastor Nick loves, and that is, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I don't know. Cheese on bread, man. Were you listening? My New Year's resolution of 2025 definitely did not include sharing a backyard with alligators, but here we are. And that's why the story of Joseph, who we'll be talking about today, resonates so deeply with me, because his life and ours teaches us what to do when life catches us off guard in those moments where you say, cheese on bread? Like, what is happening? I said cheese on bread when Pastor Nick gave me what he'd like me to cover today. We had this saying around the office and we called it getting nicked. It was when Pastor Nick knocked on your office door and he said, here's 47 things that I need done tomorrow, before tomorrow. And you're like, you got it, boss. I will design that, print that, cut that, chop that, mail that, stamp that, whatever you need. So when I was talking to Pastor Nick today, here's an entire 25-verse chunk for you to preach about. And I'm like, that's a lot of verses for 20 minutes, but we'll do what we can do. So we have condensed that. And today we're going to be walking through Genesis 37, and we will be walking through pretty much the entire life of Joseph. So from 37 to chapter 50, we're doing it all today. I obviously can't cover that as one person in 20 minutes in depth. So you have homework. Guess what? Everybody say, I just got nicked. There you go. Welcome to church on Sunday. You all have homework to do before next Sunday. And that is read the story of Joseph, chapter 37 to chapter 50, because it is an incredible story. It is a magnificent story about perseverance, about being in the pit and still being joyful, about reminding yourself that God is with you in the lows of life, and he's the one that takes you to the highs of life. When life stops you in your tracks and makes you say, cheese on bread, there's a plan for that. God will redeem it. When you look back over your life, of all the things you said cheese on bread about, and you see where you're at now, you're like, wow, I made it through that. And I remember I'm gonna light myself on fire right now. That's how stressed out I am. And then you look at it from this point, and you're like, okay, it wasn't that bad. God was with me the whole way. There was a plan. I was just terrified, but he knew. He wasn't terrified. And that's the story of Joseph. That is what the story of Joseph embarks, and that is the journey that we will be walking through today. So the first verse that we're gonna look at, number one, is Genesis 37, verses 5 through 8. Genesis 37, verse 5 says, Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. So point one is, God-given dreams can make others uncomfy. At this point in the story, Joseph is a teenager. He's living at home. God gives him dreams that symbolically show his family bowing to him. Dreams about his future, leadership, and calling. When he shares them with his brothers don't hear purpose. They hear a threat, and jealousy takes root. Joseph was already kind of deemed his father's favorite. His father gifted him this beautiful, magical, colorful robe, and he garnished him in that to make it show that, he's the chosen one. He is my chosen son. So the brothers, I have a million siblings between regular siblings and step siblings, and I say that I'm the favorite. That was funny. You could have laughed. It's okay. But my siblings get real mad because sometimes they're like, I think you're the favorite. And trust me, if they could put me in a hole, they would have. But they didn't. I moved to Florida. I win. But jealousy was already taking root. So God then gives Joseph these dreams. And they're like, he's a wheat stalk, and all of the other wheat stalks are bowing down to him. And his brothers are like, is that us? Are you telling us that we're going to be bound to you? Like, forget about it. They said in Genesis 37, verse 8, do you intend to reign over us? Joseph's dreams weren't arrogant inventions. They were divine revelation. But sometimes God's plans for you expose unresolved insecurity in others. I remember navigating the youth pastor thing, and I was still friends, and I still am to this day, with the youth pastor. That was my predecessor. And I was talking to her, and some of her leaders were like, I don't think you can do this. You're a newer Christian. I don't think this is going to work out. I don't think this is a calling. I think you're being talked into it. And there was a lot of negative pushback. And I was like, are they right? And you have that doubt. But it was their own insecurities, their own disbelief in me. And that brings us to point 1, circling back. God-given dreams can make others uncomfortable. It was God's plan for me. So they didn't have to be comfortable with it. God had to be comfortable with it, and my trust in God had to be enough, and that was all I needed. Number 2, betrayal may shock you, but it cannot cancel God's plan. We are jumping to Genesis 37, verses 23 through 28. Verse 23 through 24 says, they stripped him of his robe and threw him into the pit. Now that's condensed. Again, your homework is to read this, because it's more in depth. And when you listen to this message, it'll help you understand it better. But they stripped him of his robe and they pushed him into a pit. The robe represented favor, identity, and belonging. When his brothers remove it and throw him into a pit, they're symbolically rejecting not just Joseph, but what God has placed on his life. When we jump down to verse 28 in Genesis 37, it says, so when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of that pit and sold him for 20 shekels of silver. Joseph's story takes a violent, unexpected turn. Betrayal by family sends him into slavery, but even this can't undo what God has already ordained. God is with you even when life feels unfair. Point 3. In Genesis 39, verses 2 through 3, it says, the Lord was with Joseph and he became a successful man. Joseph is now a slave in Potiphar's house in Egypt. Even though his circumstances are unjust, God's presence is unmistakable. Joseph rises in responsibility and favor because the Lord is actively working in his life. His brothers tried to sell him into slavery, and I don't know about you, but if someone sold me into slavery, I would be pretty bummed out and torn up and destroyed about that. You'd be depressed. You'd be sad. You'd be like, what is happening? But God grabbed him from that pit and projected him to the head of Potiphar's household. He took him from slavery, this position that he was in where he was supposed to be lowly, and he elevated him again, reminding him, I'm here. Even in your struggle, we're gonna make it the best of the situation, and I'm here. Just continue to have faith in me. God's presence did not remove Joseph from hardship, but it sustained him within it. So God is with you even when life feels unfair. Integrity matters, especially when no one is watching. This is kind of like a Sunday morning faith. There's a song that talks about, I want more than a Sunday morning faith. I want to worship you on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday and Saturday, all the days of the week, not just when I'm sitting in a pew on Sunday morning. I want to be with you, God, every day, every moment. And that's the same as the integrity that comes with being a Christian. The joy of the Lord that you hold within your heart that comes with being a Christian. Especially when no one is watching, behind closed doors, in the hard times. It is so easy to be down and distraught and feel forgotten and feel lost and to feel hopeless. But even in those moments, your integrity matters. Your integrity in the Lord matters. Your faith in the Lord matters. In Genesis 39, verses 7 through 12, 39:9 says, how then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? Now, Potiphar had one rule for Joseph. Potiphar's like, you are elevated in this house. You have ruling over everything. You can make all of the decisions. So he was like the head of the slaves. Like he bossed everybody else around. Like this floor needs mopped, do it. This needs done, do it. He had all say, all freedom, all opportunity in Potiphar's house except for one thing. And that was Potiphar's wife was off limits. Don't flirt with the lady. She taken. Keep your hands to yourself, right? Potiphar's wife repeatedly pressured Joseph, however, to lure him in. She'd bat her eyelashes. She'd stand there and be like, oh, right? She's a damsel in distress. Like, help me, Joseph, help me. And Joseph's like, not today. He kept that integrity. He knew that one rule, especially when no one was watching. How could he sin against God? How could he do the wicked thing? He couldn't do it. He denied. Every advance he denied. Nope. Joseph refused, not because he might get caught, but because he understands that private compromise is still public sin before God. Let me repeat that. Private compromise is still public sin before God. When you're alone and you're tempted and you're like, well, who's gonna know about it? Nobody's gonna know about it. Nobody's gonna know that I'm watching this TikTok that I probably shouldn't be putting my eyes on. Nobody's gonna know that I'm sneaking this 947th Christmas tree lunch cake. They're all sleeping. They won't know how they disappeared. David. Just kidding. But in the private compromise is still a public sin. When you make that private compromise, it's still a public sin because God sees it. God is who's important. Nobody here is as important of an opinion as God's opinion of you. And God can see you 24/7, 365, even when you think that the lights are off, I'm in the kitchen pantry, door's shut, nobody's looking, I ate all the M&Ms. Guess what? God's like this. He sees you. So, private compromise, public sin. In 39:12, it says, she caught him by his garment, but he left his garment in her hand and he fled. So this lady was not taking no for an answer. She literally taking his coat off. She like, give me that robe. And he like, not today. He bobbed, weaved, spun, and darted. Left the coat behind. He didn't care about that robe. He was like, no, ma'am. No, sirree. He literally runs from temptation, choosing integrity even when it costs him everything. Point 5, faithfulness doesn't always bring immediate reward. Genesis 39, 19 through 20, one part says, Joseph's master took him and put him in prison. What? Where's the justice in that? This lady is like, come and get it. And Joseph's like, nuh-uh, nice try. And then he still gets thrown in jail, all because she had his robe. Potiphar believed her. She screamed. She's like, oh, that man, he wanted me. He threw his robe. I screamed. He ran. He left his robe behind. And then this man gets tossed in jail. Where's the justice in that? He did the right thing. Again, how do you think he's thinking? If that happened to me, I'd be like, bruh, I did the right thing. Now I'm in prison. Like, what is happening, Jesus? What is happening, God? Like, what? Where's the justice? Despite doing the right thing, Joseph is falsely accused and imprisoned. This moment reminds us that obedience doesn't always protect us from consequences, but it does protect our character. Point 6, waiting seasons are often preparation seasons. Genesis 40, 14 through 23, verse 23 says, yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, he forgot about him. While in prison, Joseph faithfully interprets dreams for Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. Though Joseph helps them, the one who is restored forgets him completely. Joseph's chilling in jail. He's, still singing the praises of the Lord. He's not down in the dumps. He's still doing God's work, even in prison. The cupbearer and the baker, they get chucked in jail because they made the Pharaoh mad, or the Pharaoh was having a bad day that day. I don't know. He was just like, everybody going to prison, right? This bagel is stale. You going to jail. This wine is warm. You going to prison, right? So they're down there with Joseph, and they're like, man, we just got thrown in here, and we didn't even do nothing. Joseph's like, who you telling? But they both had a dream. One had a dream that gave him favor. That was the cupbearer. Cupbearer had a dream that in 3 days he would be restored and brought back to Pharaoh's being his cupbearer. The baker was like, I had a dream too. This was my dream. And Joseph was like, it was nice knowing you. Because his dream was not favorable. His dream was, sorry, bro. But one was favorable, one was not. Joseph interpreted these dreams with the Lord's help accurately. The cupbearer got restored. Cupbearer's like, if this is true and I get restored, I got you, bro. I'm gonna tell Pharaoh all about you. Well, cupbearer, much like myself, was like, I got you, bro, I'm gonna get a Bible. He didn't do that. Cupbearer forgot Joseph, I forgot my Bible. We went on living our lives, right? Genesis 41:1 says, when 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. 2 years, Joseph's sitting down there in that prison like, okay, that cupbearer, he's been back up there for a minute now. Any day. 2 years. 2 years passed. Pharaoh has a dream. 2 years of silence follow. God is still working, but Joseph is learning patience, humility, and trust in the unseen. 7, God can flip the script in a moment. Genesis 41:14, and then 39 through 41. Genesis 41:14 says, so Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. In a single day, Joseph is pulled up from prison to interpret Pharaoh's troubling dreams that no one else can understand. So the cupbearer's living his life. Pharaoh's like, man, I had the weirdest dream last night. 2 years later, and the cupbearer's like, I know a guy. I was supposed to tell you about him. Totally forgot. But he's still down there. That's good news. Still got him captured. Still know exactly where he's at. Let me go get him for you. So then Joseph, who's minding his business for 2 years, wondering where his cupbearer is, finally gets elevated in one single day. As quick as that, the script is flipped, and he is now interpreting Pharaoh's dream. Genesis 41:39, it says, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. Joseph immediately is elevated to second in command over all of Egypt. Years of waiting suddenly make sense. Craziness. He went from being in a pit, being sold into slavery, being the head of Potiphar's house, being accused of a crime he didn't commit and thrown in jail, helping out the cupbearer, and then being stuck in jail because he forgot about for 2 whole years. And then snatched back up out of jail into Pharaoh's house and made second in command over the entire kingdom of Egypt. What? Cheese on bread? Like, that's wild. Craziness. And the dream that he interprets wasn't just like, some blah, blah, blah. There was a sheep that, wandered away. No, it was, hey, Egypt is going to produce all of this food over the next several years. But then after that, it's going to be dry, it's going to be barren, there ain't going to be a grain of food. So Joseph's like, what we should do is harvest all this food, save it, ration it, so that way when those years of hardship come, we got something to eat, we got something to drink, and we can live large. And Pharaoh's like, bro, you are smart, you're second in command. Like, look at God, that's craziness. Point 8, forgiveness reveals the purpose of pain. Genesis 45:4-8. Genesis 45:4 says, I am your brother, Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. Joseph finally reveals himself to the brothers who betrayed him. This is the moment where revenge would feel justified, but Joseph sees God's hand instead. So Joseph's brothers, who told their daddy that Joseph was dead, they were like, yeah, he dead, he dead. they come crawling back to Joseph, not knowing it's Joseph, and be like, we starving, help us. And Joseph is like, bruh. But they don't recognize him. They're not expecting to see him. They think he's dead or in slavery. They don't care where he's at. They're like, whatever. But they're crying. They're like, oh, help us, Joseph. Joseph could be like, I think we're going to throw you in a pit. And then we're going to sell you into slavery. Then we're going to put you in jail for a crime you don't commit. And then, if you make it through all that, we'll give you a cheeseburger. Maybe. Maybe not. But no, instead, Joseph forgives. Genesis 45:5 says, it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Joseph recognizes when he looks back over all the stuff that he just went through, he recognizes that God was orchestrating provision and preservation through every painful chapter. He realizes that if his brother hadn't thrown him into the pit, sold him into slavery, told their daddy he was dead, he hadn't gone to Potiphar's house, get thrown in prison, met the cupbearer, got forgotten about by the cupbearer, but the cupbearer remembered him when they had a dream, gone into Pharaoh's house, everybody would have been dead. Everybody would have starved to death because nobody was able to interpret Pharaoh's dream like Joseph did. Pharaoh would have had a dream, and just like many of us would be like, that was a weird dream, bro. I had a weird dream last night. And then nothing would have come of it. God's purpose would not have been fulfilled. So Joseph realizes that without his brother's betrayal and without his brothers giving him all those cheese on bread moments, God's story would not have been fulfilled. Every painful chapter had a meaning. Point 9, God redeems what others intended for harm. Genesis 50, verse 20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. This statement comes at the end of Joseph's life. After reconciliation and restoration, looking back, Joseph can finally see the full picture. God used every betrayal, delay, and injustice to bring about salvation for many. The story comes full circle. Every time. Even if you don't see it, the story comes full circle. When I look back over my life, I can see so many moments that felt like the pits. A car accident that almost cost me my arm. A promise I made to God that I didn't keep, at least not right away. God made sure that I kept it. He was like, here's the Bible, here's the Bible, here's the Bible. Sorry, Dad. Years of wandering without direction, not knowing why I was spared or what I was spared for. There were seasons where I felt forgotten. There were seasons where I thought, if God really had a plan, surely it wouldn't look like this. And yet, here I am, standing in the very church where I gave my life to Jesus, having served as a pastor, married to a man who loves God and our children, living in a place I never planned to live, preaching a message that I never would have imagined that I'd be preaching. And just like Joseph, I can look back now and see that what felt like chaos was actually choreography. It felt like I was in a downward spiral of chaos. It felt like I didn't know which way was left, which way was right, which way was up, which way was down. But it was actually choreography. God was yeeting me to the left, God was yeeting me to the right, God was yeeting me up, and God was yeeting me down. And for those of you that don't know what yeet means, it basically means just chucking it. God was ping-ponging me all over the place from the very beginning, redirecting me, all of my missteps, choreographing my entire life for purpose, not for pain. The pain had a purpose. The pit wasn't punishment, it was positioning. The waiting wasn't wasted, it was preparation. The unexpected turns weren't detours, they were divine redirection. Joseph didn't understand the pit when he was in it. He didn't understand the prison while he was waiting. But at the end of his life, he could say with confidence, Genesis 50, verse 20, what you intended for evil, God intended for good. And I can say the same. I didn't plan the accident. I didn't plan leaving a full-time career. I didn't plan Florida or the alligators. But I can see now that God was never reacting to my life. He was redeeming it. Nothing caught him off guard. It caught me off guard, but it never caught him off guard. His actions weren't reactions. His actions were redemptions. So if your life feels off script right now, if you're in a season you didn't choose, didn't want, and didn't understand, hear this clearly. You're not forgotten. You're not behind. You're not disqualified. When life catches you off guard or doesn't go as you planned it, God is still writing the story. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not even soon. I can't make you promises I cannot keep. I am not God. I do not know. But one day, I do know, you'll look back and you'll realize that every unexpected chapter was leading you exactly to where you needed to be. Now, if you can all bow your heads and close your eyes as the worship team makes their way back up for me. I want to take a moment and I just want you to really focus. Just listen. Don't be distracted. If you have kids, tell them to sit down and shut up. No, I'm just kidding. If you have kids, please pay attention to them. I don't want them running up here, but bow your heads, close your eyes, and just listen. Just focus for a second. I want to take a moment that I never like to rush past because moments like this matter. Maybe as you were listening, something stirred inside of you. Maybe you realized, I've been trying to write my own story. I've been trying to force that pen to write what I want it to write. Or maybe you once walked closely with God, but life happened. That happens. And somewhere along the way, you drifted. If you're here today and you would say, this is my first time choosing Jesus, or this is my moment of coming back to him, or maybe it's not the first or second or third time, but today you're choosing to fully surrender and trust him with every single piece and chapter. I want you to know that this moment is for you. This moment was for me in June of 2018. With every head bowed and every eye closed, if that's you, I'm not gonna ask you to come forward or say anything out loud or shout it from the rooftops, but I am gonna ask you to just do one simple act of faith. If you're saying yes to Jesus today, whether for the first time, the third time, or the 1,000th time, just lift your hand right now for me. Let him know that he is in control of your life, that he is in control of your pieces, of your chapters. He can redeem anything if you let him. And I am walking, breathing proof up here on this stage today because I gave my life to Jesus. I fully surrendered. I let him lead. I don't obey 100% all the time, fault-free. Just like a child, I don't listen to my father sometimes, but he yeets me back into place, and I'm like, okay, I hear you. That's on me. He loves you. He cares about you. He wants your story to be a story of redemption. He doesn't want it to be a story full of pain. He wants it to be a story that had some pain for purpose. Things are not easy. Life is not easy. If you're over the age of 14, 13, sometimes even 12, life has hit you hard already a couple times and you know that it's not easy. And I'm not promising it'll be easy, but I am promising that it is easier when you have someone to talk to all the time. And that someone is God. He's writing your story. He knows every piece of you. He knows every piece of the story, every chapter, every word. I forgot to tell you, you could put your hands down. That's my bad. You can go ahead and put your hand down if you had it up. If your arm hurts, Bill Nick. Church, no matter what hand you raised, and if you raised a hand or even if you didn't, this is a moment we walk through together. Because we're side by side. We are one family in this building. We are the family of God. We are the church of Christ. We are his hands and his feet and his heart. So I'm gonna ask everyone, even if you didn't raise your hand, in support to the people that did that are sitting next to you, I'm asking everyone to repeat this prayer out loud with me as one family. Jesus, I come to you as I am. I admit that I need you. I've tried to do life my own way. And today I choose to trust yours. I believe you died for my sins and rose again to give me new life. Forgive me, heal me, redeem every part of my story. I give you my past, my present, and my future. Be the Lord of my life. Write my story your way. From this day forward, I choose to follow you. In Jesus' name, amen. And church, if you prayed that prayer, whether quietly, boldly, or through tears, know this: heaven celebrates obedience. Grace meets you right where you are, and your story is far from over. Reflect on those promises as we worship together and sing about trusting the faithfulness of God. I want you to think about the words that we just prayed together. I want you to seriously believe in that trust in God. If you guys can stand and join me as we worship together one more time.